Turok Rage Wars was the third game in the Turok series to hit Nintendo 64 consoles, but many people still seem surprised sometimes to find out that there was in fact a fourth Turok game on Nintendo 64. By the time of the release of Turok 3 Shadows of Oblivion, the third and final game in the core Turok series to hit the console, many gamers had already abandoned the system. After all, it was in August 2000 the game was finally released and the console was starting to show its age by this point. But that didn't stop Acclaim Studios Austin from releasing this underrated gem on the console. After the experiences with Turok and Turok 2, they were able to listen to much of the negative points that fans aimed towards parts of Turok 2 and create what I personally believe to be the best game in the Turok series. A lot of the criticism levelled by some at Turok 2 was that it strayed far from the primitive feel of the Turok 1 storyline. Those same fans will likely feel the same towards Turok 3, as this is as far from the game's roots as you could possibly want to go. The game picks up where Turok 2 left off, where we were first introduced to Oblivion. The current Turok is still Joshua Fireseed, and he has dreams of a child he must protect. During the night, Oblivion's spawn teleport into his bedroom and attempt to kill him in his sleep, but he wakes just in time to utter a one-liner and then take them out with a single shot. His brother and sister are disturbed by the commotion and approach to help, but Joshua Fireseed is overcome by his enemies. His brother and sister have just enough time to escape and continue the Turok lineage before Joshua Fireseed blows himself up. As they are escaping the scene, they are attacked, but help is at hand as Aeon, the female alien helper from the first Turok game, shows up and teleports them both to the council meeting about how to tackle Oblivion. After this blockbuster start to the game and one of the longest intro sequences since Daikatana, you are prompted to choose to play as either Danielle, who is built more on firepower, or Joseph, who gives you a stealth approach to the game. Your choice of character does alter the game, as there are some variations on both gameplay, weapons and level selection when you choose either, which means that you will most likely want to play through the game with each to experience the game's entire story arc. The first thing you will likely notice in the game are its incredible visuals. Graphically, I believe this is quite possibly the best looking N64 game ever made. The textures when the expansion pack is used are crisp and clear, and I'm hard pushed to think of another N64 game with such clarity. The environments are also second to none. The game has 5 distinct worlds, from the opening futuristic city all the way to revisiting the Land of the Lost from Turok 1, although this time around everything looks a million times better. Each of the worlds are broken down into 4 levels, my personal favourite being the underwater military base, which looks incredible. Add to this over 40 types of enemy and some improved AI from the previous Turok games, and you have a game as great to look as it is to play. Thankfully, Acclaim did take care of the horror of the previous Turok game's save points. Gone are the days when you spend an hour getting to a save point only to be killed and need to restart all over. The game has a save anywhere feature, and also frequent autosaves, which means that you can be more gung-ho in your attacks without the fear of being sent back to the start of the mission. The game handily also pops up mission objectives on screen, so you're never left with endless wandering around of the previous games, and whilst the levels are still huge, it gives the gameplay a lot more focus. If you have mastered the Turok control scheme by now by playing the previous games, then you'll be right at home here. But for those who prefer the classic GoldenEye style controls, then you can just change this in the options menu. However, once you start moving around, you begin to see the immense strain those visuals put on the frame rate. There is no denying that the game can get incredibly choppy at times with multiple enemies on screen. To alleviate this, Acclaim have downed the enemies to disappear into smoke after being killed, but nothing can hide a somewhat shaky feel to the game. This is very noticeable in the boss battles, however the sheer quality of the boss designs will make you forgive this. Let me just say that they are some of the most unique and challenging battles in the game, which require not just insane amounts of firepower, but the use of the environment to bring them down. The bosses also sometimes have stages to them, which means that you'll need to adapt your gameplay and think on your feet as the task at hand transitions between attack patterns. The game doesn't always hold your hand when fighting the bosses, so a lot of trial and error is in order, which you will either enjoy the challenge of or it will frustrate you like crazy, but thankfully the ammo and health regenerate in the boss levels. The audio in the game is also a personal highlight. There is a ton of digitized voice acting, and for the most part it is well done. Sure, there are some hammy cutscenes that will leave you cringing, but there are also some great cutscenes which drive the story forward. Add to this an orchestrated soundtrack which rivals Turok 2. Whilst it's perhaps not as memorable to its prequel, it still heightens the atmosphere and captures the mood of the level you're in. And what Turok game would be complete without an insane arsenal of weaponry? Some critics said that the game took a backward step, but there is certainly a huge amount of weapons here, with each of the game's standard guns having an upgradable option, which therefore doubles the count. The characters also have their own unique weapons and equipment. Joseph, for example, has a night vision goggles which allows you to execute sneaking attacks in the game and also dodge lasers in a mission very similar to Mission Impossible. The trusted cerebral bore returns this time, but there's also 2 upgraded versions for you to play with. Firstly, there's the Cerebral Burst, which is a sticky version, but my personal favourite is Joseph's Cerebral Possessor, which lets you take control of an enemy before detonating, which queues up some pretty epic enemy takedowns. And in a nice touch, all of the game's weapons can be used underwater this time. There is also the PSG, which is found in 5 parts throughout the game, which essentially creates a black hole which is essential for taking down Oblivion in the game's final epic encounter, which you will definitely need to help you blast him into Oblivion. Oh dear. Finishing off Turok 3 Shadows of Oblivion, it was a fantastic first person shooter which was perhaps a little too late on the N64 library scene to really cause the splash it should have rightly done. It won't please everyone for staying far from the series' roots, but in the context of an evolving trilogy, it was a grand finale that showed that franchises don't have to keep churning out the same game every year. But do you remember Turok 3? Or by this time was your N64 gathering dust awaiting the next generation of console games? Or perhaps you had clung onto your beloved console and played this like crazily to finally get the ending to the trilogy that we've been spending 5 years building up to. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time.